In our next session, we'll delve into innovative building design practices that are improving indoor air quality and energy efficiency. Let's give a warm welcome to Joakim Lindh, Head of Product at Airthings. Hello.
You.
Welcome, Joakim. And the stage is yours.
Thank you. So this morning I did something very scary. And I'm not talking about the social run that Urban Forward arranged this morning in the rain, but I did go to ChatGTP and I actually posed this very question to see the results. I got 12 very good answers that actually turned out to be a bit counterintuitive, but overall, we're good to go. No surprises. So energy is a hot topic these days, right? With the EU taxonomy, we have the CO2 emissions, we have the global footprint and all that stuff going on. What I'm here to teach you today that the indoor air quality has a very strong bond to the energy efficiency of a building. My name is Joakim Lindh. I'm working for a global tech company called Airthings. Our mission is to empower people to breathe better. My mission is to fit in commercial buildings into that mission while not sacrificing energy efficiency. Gold has been very valuable for a very long time. We know that data is the new gold, right? We track everything these days. We're very concerned about the nutrition in the food and the drinks that we consume, or at least most of us. We are aware and we can make conscious decisions on what we're putting into our body. Right now, I want everybody to do something for me, okay? I want you to take a deep breath, okay? Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. And exhale. Did you taste anything? Do you feel anything? What was in the air that you just breathed in? Do you have any clue? It is invisible, right? We don't really know what we're breathing in. The thing is that the air has a huge impact on our productivity. We heard it on the session before, and you're going to hear more about it today with me now. It is invisible, and we need to make the invisible visible. We have to. We spend 90% of our time indoors, where we know that the pollution can be up to 5 times as worse compared to outdoors. Consider wildfires, combustion, these large cities with a lot of pollution. This is pollution that leaks into buildings. Modern buildings, they have MER filters, HEPA filters. There are building design practices to alleviate the things that get into the building. But there's a lot of pollution that comes from the building itself or in from under the ground. When we're 40, we've spent 36 years indoors. And another way of putting it, we spend more time inside buildings than certain whale species spend underwater. Mind-boggling, if you ask me. This comes from a book written by Dr. Joseph Allen and John McComber, Healthy Buildings. It's a very interesting book that I think you should read if you're into this kind of stuff. But we are the indoor generation. This is us. Most buildings that are built today are built very tight. They're sealed, and the only way these actually operate in a good way is that if the ventilation is running optimally over time. So when a new build is being built, it's being tested, everything works, and then tenants move in, and then the expectation and the assumption is that everything will continue to work. That is not the case. I had the same assumption when I started at Airthings in 2019. I came from the world of Internet of Things, embedded connectivity. I was a software programmer for a small chipset that enabled ways to connect from your phone to your devices. My assumption was that buildings, it's just building blocks you put together like Legos, and it's all going to work, right? Everything's going to be fine. That's not the case. Since I started Airthings in 2019, I learned that there isn't one single building on the planet of Earth that actually operates optimally. Not a single one. But it's not really the new builds that is the biggest concern. 50% or 80%, sorry, of today's buildings will still exist in 2050. Buildings live for a very long time. They need to be cared for, they need to be managed, they need to be managed smarter. I refer to these kind of buildings as brown buildings, the larger mass of the buildings we have out there. And the biggest impacts can be done with retrofitting these existing buildings, the brown buildings. You might have heard of the term sick building syndrome. It's often tied to a feeling that something isn't right. It manifests itself like something is off. And it's tied to absenteeism, and people generally have feelings. Often we don't have the tools of putting the data to these feelings. And that's really what we're trying to do at Airthings as well, to transform these feelings into data-driven knowledge, into insights that can take actions on. But what kind of data are we actually looking at? What kind of data could represent certain feelings? Indoor air quality is a function of the outdoor air, right? There's dangerous gases, pollution, combustion, things getting into the building. But we also have pollution inside the buildings. We have volatile organic compounds, airborne chemicals that is off-gassed by furniture or paint, or even the cleaning products have these chemicals. We also have CO2, which is actually a byproduct from us humans, right? We breathe out CO2. And ironically, when we reach a certain level of CO2, between 1,000 ppm and 2,000 ppm, something happens. You may have been experiencing it sitting in a meeting room, you're starting to feel drowsy, you're wondering, why do I need another coffee? I feel really tired. That's typically because you don't have fresh air in the room. You have increased levels of CO2. The room isn't ventilating properly. It's an interesting aspect that the fact that the cognitive ability that you're impacted by these increased levels of CO2, around 1,000 to 2,000 ppm, is the equivalent of drinking a pint of beer. Think about that when you're sending the kids off to schools with poor ventilation. How are they able to learn? Think about the important meetings at the office, making the strategic plans, making the right decisions when you're not functionally right in the head. To not be aware of the indoor air quality, to me, is one of the biggest overseen life quality aspects of our modern society. And just the fact that radon, which is an odorless, colorless gas, is being considered to be mandatory to monitor in homes, but not in commercial buildings. It is the cause of lung cancer, or the primary cause of lung cancer amongst non-smokers. So we should really be looking at that as well. So these are all kinds of things that concerns me, right? But in terms of the health aspects, I really love this quote. Your facility manager has a greater impact on your health than your doctor, right? They're the ones who can control and make sure that the building is running optimally, that you're spending a lot of time in. Consider the pandemic. What did we learn? Viruses spread through air. It's airborne, right? It piggybacks on particles in the air. What happens in a stale air condition? What happens when the ventilation is down or is poorly executed? The viruses will hang in the air exactly like bricks don't. And then you're just going to walk straight into it. Certain temperatures, certain humidities, these viruses will be surviving in the air. And this is why we've seen an increased amount of infection throughout the winter periods where we have a lower humidity, as an example. So you might think as a facility manager being the one that fixes problems, fixes shit, fix the comfort level, but it's so much more than that. In fact, it's not only about the health aspects for a facility manager. They have the power to also impact the energy efficiency of the building. Because in terms of measuring the indoor air quality, you can, of course, get insights into increasing the health and productivity aspects. You can just run the ventilation 100% all the time, right? That will solve the problem. What happens with energy efficiency? Goes through the roof. You're introducing heating and cooling race conditions, which also kind of drives the energy usage up, right? 40% of the global energy consumption comes from commercial buildings. 10% can actually be saved just by optimizing the heating, cooling, and the ventilation. 5% can actually be saved by simply changing the temperature 1 degree closer to the outdoor temperature. Today, a facility manager, they do all this stuff based on guts. They don't have the right tools. They do it based on feelings. They do it on demand, right? It is about finding the balance. And finding the balance is the biggest challenge of them all. How are we able to comply to having healthy buildings while also saving the energy operational costs? There's things that we can look at in terms of ventilation. If, for example, you have CO2 levels never going above 600 ppms, man, you're over-ventilating. You're pushing in too much air into the building. You're wasting a lot of energy. Another thing to consider is the filtration of the building, the HEPA filters, the MERV filters. Are they efficient enough? Just put a sensor on each side. You'll get the differential pressure. You will easily know when it's time to actually replace the filter. Or maybe you can use it even longer than the service actually states that you should use it. Space utilization. The way we utilize offices and buildings these days isn't the same as we used to. After the pandemic, we don't work 9 to 5 in the office. Sometimes we work at home. So having the right tools through indoor air quality, we can actually determine how spaces are being used and thus make important decisions on how we can sort of implement demand-based strategies. The most innovative building design practice across all buildings there is today starts with one thing: indoor air quality monitoring. From that, you can do a lot of things. Why is this suddenly important now? Why is this suddenly a hot topic today? 10 years ago, we didn't have the technology in the same way as we have today. Today, you can slap up some wireless sensors, feed that into a system, get actionable insights for a very low cost. And you can get the return on investment in just a few weeks based on energy savings. So, come on, bring it on. So the most cost-efficient, the most innovative, the most preventive method starts with indoor air quality monitoring. So what Airthings is providing is a full set of tools with actionable insights based on input from small sensors. The uniqueness here is that you put a sticker, slap it to the wall in each room, and it starts to send data up to the cloud, where it's presented in forms where you can make informal decisions. You can take actions immediately. And the way that you can do that in a very easily manner, that is the future. Facility managers, the people who operate buildings, the stakeholders, need to be able to do this in a very cost-efficient, easy, and fast manner. And the technology is there today. The real question is, what we're exploring right now, what is the right method to pipe this data straight into the BMS system? How can we bypass the facility manager and directly control the heating, cooling, and ventilation based on the data that we're collecting? We're doing this today. What about enhancing it with AI to control it even smarter? The question we should really ask ourselves is, are we ready for this? Is the market ready for this? I often refer to the HVAC industry as the dinosaur business because they're relying on a lot of protocols, a lot of things that was invented in 1980. That's an unfortunate truth. I think we're really ready to take that next step. And Airthings is ready to help anybody taking that next step of controlling buildings in a much smarter way. If you're into discussing these kind of things, please connect to me. I will be here the 2 days. We can discuss further. I'm all about talking what we can do to reduce the CO2 emissions and make sure to reduce or improve our global footprint. Thank you.